With 8 top 20 hits on the Hot 100, 10 top 20 Christian songs, and 5 country hits, our guest has found a way to cross genres like few artists before. Joining us is the great B.J. Thomas on the VVN Music Podcast. Hi, and welcome to episode 24 of the VVN Music Podcast. I'm Roger Wink, and our guest today is singer B.J. Thomas. B.J. first broke on the scene in 1966 with a cover of Hank Williams' I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry, and over the next decade, scored with such classics as Hooked on a Feeling, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, I Just Can't Help Believing, and another Somebody Done Somebody Wrong song. In the late 70s, he moved into the Christian market, and in the early 80s added a number of country hits to his lengthy discography. This is an archive interview from 2013, when B.J. released his album The Living Room Sessions, a disc of re-recordings of his hits, but with a twist. Each was cast with a different arrangement and instrumentation from the originals, and for 2/3 of the tracks, he brought in duet partners like Gill, Richard Marx, Slade of The Fray, Lyle Lovett, Keb Mo, and Steve Terrell. As with our other archive interviews, these were not originally recorded for broadcast or streaming use, so sound quality is a bit lessened.
This is an honor to talk to you.
No, thank you, man. I sure thank you for that great review you gave my CD. That was wonderful.
Well, it's a great album. Congratulations on it, and also. We wrote an article last night. Congratulations on having your highest charting album on 30 years. Yeah,
it didn't take much to beat the last 30 years. It's been kind of a weird period of time for me.
Right. You know, the bottom line is you have this new album, and it seems to be doing really well, and I think that's great.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It's good. I have re-recorded my hits in the past, and it's always seemed to be a mistake because it's very hard to recapture that original feeling. And this time, when it was suggested, and then someone, I forget if it was Sandy Knox, Katie Gillen, or possibly it was Gloria, my wife, suggested that, well, let's do it unplugged. You've never done it acoustically, and that kind of piqued our interest, and so it did turn out pretty good. I'm satisfied with it. I think it gave me a chance to work with a lot of other people and work with Kyle Lenning, and we kind of co-produced that thing, and so I think it turned out well. I'm glad people are receiving it well too.
Well, I think a lot of the brilliance of the album is what you just mentioned, which is to do it in kind of a stripped down acoustic versions of the songs. I mean, there's some wonderful arrangements on there. Who did the arranging on it?
Well, we kind of, Kyle and I and Brian Sutton, who was basically the band leader, he's a guitar player, we kind of would just, as we did the song, they would, almost arrange themselves. If there needed to be anything, we would just kind of head arrange them and talk about what we needed to do if we needed to lower the key. On one of the songs, on Don't Worry Baby, we lowered the key and kind of cut back on some of the falsetto and the falsetto part and change the arrangement a little bit. We stayed fairly true to the original character of the songs, but we did change them a little bit here and there, and that made them a little more interesting, even in this situation.
Well, I think one of my very favorite spots on the record is the last cut, Everybody's Out of Town, and the replacement of those horns with, I assume that's bottleneck guitar.
Yeah, that's Brian Sutton on the guitar, and he played a slide, some kind of banjo and the guitar. I mean, he played 4 or 5 different instruments on that thing, and they were the one thing about the group we had, they were not intimidated by any of the songs, especially Everybody's Out of Town. It's really an intimidating song if you're going to try to do anywhere near the original, which we did. We kept really the essence of the original. And that, of course, Everybody is Out of Town was the follow-up to Raindrops, and it was a number 1 record in Canada, a number 1 record in Australia, but nobody really got it in the States that as much as we thought they would. It was kind of I don't know if weird is the word, but it was a different kind of song for its time, and even now it's kind of different.
Well, it is. The trumpet part was very different, even though
I remember the session clearly, and Bert having talking with the trumpet player. The trumpet player was saying, "How do I do this?" They're looking at the music, and he's saying, "How do I do this?" And Bert said, "Just mash all the valves down at once and let them all out at once, slowly." And so Bert, he was, that guy is amazing because, he would write everything that was done on his records. He would compose it down to the drum fills and just everything. So he was a brilliant guy.
Where did the idea of doing it as at least about 2/3 of the songs as duets come from?
Well, we decided, we thought it would be a good marketing tool to market this, and I hadn't had anything for a while, and there would be people. Some of the songs would just be so perfect for duetting that we maybe, I can say it's possible that maybe we did maybe 2 or 3 too many duets. 5 probably would have been okay, but people, kept wanting to be involved. I know when I was talking to Sarah Nimitz I've known her since she was a child, and I've kept up with her over the years. And she's 20 now, and she's a great actress and singer, and she's going to be huge one day. And then texting back and forth with her about being involved on the record. Well, Richard Marx also loves Sarah, and so he texted me and said, "Hey, I want to be involved in this thing." And then once we talked and everything, he had a real personal connection to Wrong Song, so it kind of came about that way. And Sandy Knox bumped into Isaac Slade somewhere, I think, having breakfast or something, and he said to her, "Hey, I hear that VJ's recording," and so she told him all about it, and he volunteered. So a lot of them we went and got. Like Lyle, I called on the phone and asked him to be a part of it, and he had some history with Bacharach in the past, and so he wanted to do Raindrops, and it just kind of worked out that way. Vince is a longtime friend, and so it was kind of a no-brainer to ask him, and we get a lot of response to that duet on Believin'. So it just worked out that way. We might have done too many in retrospect, but it sure was fun working with those guys. The Keb Mo thing especially was kind of a unique, interesting thing.
I think that it's great that the sound of it. I think that the duets worked out great. I don't see it at all as having too many on there.
Good. Okay. Good.
Matter of fact, as I mentioned in the review, there were a couple of songs, at least one song that I really wish was on there, which was Mighty Clouds of Joy, but I know that you have to limit it somewhat.
Yeah. I wanted that song on there too, but somehow it got eliminated, and because that's one of my favorite songs. I do that every time I perform. In my live shows, I do that, and I've got great memories. And I cut that with Buddy Bowie down in Doraville, Georgia, when the Atlanta Rhythm section was the studio band. So before they had hits, so I wanted that one. Maybe we may even do like if this thing really turns out well, and we need a volume 2, then we'll definitely have Clouds on that one.
I'll look forward to that, because that's a fantastic song.
I love that song. Robert Nix and Buddy Bowie wrote it, and they heard I guess one of them was listening to the radio, and they played a Mighty Clouds of Joy song, the gospel group, and it gave them the idea, and they wrote the song around that. Did
you actually go in the studio with each of the artists to record?
Yeah, I did. I missed, I regrettably, I missed Keb Mo, but and Steve Tyrell did his vocal in California, and I was actually had a date. I was booked on the day that we did Isaac Slade, but the other ones, the other duets, I was there. It was so very interesting, and I so enjoyed that doing my songs with someone else.
One of the things that struck me on the album was that your voice is so strong and pure today, and as I mentioned, especially on like the end section, I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry. Is there anything that you've done over the years to keep your voice in shape?
Yeah, all my bad habits I've had to stop to keep my voice, to keep my throat healthy. I mean, of course, not smoking is a no-brainer, but I have to watch what I eat, especially the older I get. I have to not eat late, and I have to do healthy things and eat the proper food, and not to go to sleep on a full stomach and things like that. So just simple things like that I have to do. I have to try to get enough rest, and in this business sometimes you're working and there's no way to get any sleep. So you've got to deal with that some. But if I get enough rest and I eat properly, and I have a pretty healthy lifestyle. I'm mainly a family guy and just involved with my family, so I have a kind of a healthy lifestyle now, and that all goes to keep my voice in shape.
You had mentioned being a longtime friends with Sarah Nimitz. Now, it's my understanding that you met her at one of your shows when she was quite young.
Yeah, I met her the first time that I was doing a one-nighter in Chicago, and her mom was there, and I think actually I bumped into her mom before the show, and she said, "My daughter can sing," and she loves Hooked on a Feeling, and we kind of laughed and talked about that. And then as I was doing the show, they were sitting right down in front, and Sarah was 4 years old, and so anyway, I'm doing Hooked on a Feeling, and her mom had said something, and she was pointing to Sarah, and so I pulled Sarah up on stage and gave her the mic, and she sang about a half a verse of Hooked on a Feeling, just absolutely as in tune as anything I've ever heard, and it's really unusual for someone that young to have that kind of tone and that kind of pitch, and so she just has that naturally, and so we kind of kept in touch off and on, and I knew that she was building her career and slowly becoming what she wanted to be, which I think she's going to be huge one day. She's got a unique, soulful voice, and she is just a terrific girl, so sweet and a great character. So, she's got a great future in front of her.
I was also impressed with the voice of Etta Britt, and I wasn't familiar with her. She's a label mate of yours?
She was with Wrinkle. I'm not sure she's with them now, but she did have almost had a very successful album. She had some great reviews, and it just almost caught on. I'm not sure she's with them now, but my wife loves her album, and of course my wife Gloria wrote New Looks, and that was the main one we rearranged. We kind of put it in a different key, and I did a new melody to it, and that was really a fun one to do. But my wife loved her and wanted her on that, and she did a great job.
Of course, you are known very much for Raindrops, and I heard somewhere in the past that you were sick when you recorded the original soundtrack version.
Yeah, they had Paul Cantor, who was my manager at that time, or the people with Scepter, contacted me, and I was doing like 3 weeks of one-nighters in the Midwest, and man, this was right at the end of that 3-week run. They flew me out to California to do that session with Bert, and man, my throat was shot. When I got to California, I could hardly talk, and Gloria went with me, and my throat was just killing me, and at that time, I smoked cigarettes. So, man, I had a rehearsal with Bird on a Saturday, and then we were shooting the bicycle scene on Sunday. So I went to a doctor's office on Saturday, and he told me, he said, "Son, this is the worst throat I've ever seen." And he said, "I don't want you to even speak for 2 weeks." He said, get a pen and a pad, and you write down anything you want to say." And I said, "Oh, Doc, you got to help me, because I've got a rehearsal today with Burt Bacharach, and I've got a session tomorrow with Burt Bacharach and Hal David for a Paul Newman movie." So he gave me a B12 shot, and he gave me some pills to shrink my vocal cords, and he did the best he could. But and I think I sang it through 5 times to the bicycle scene. But man, Bert was furious. It just, if you ever hear it again, you can just tell I'm very, very ragged. And one of the 20th Century Fox people came up to me and said, that's a good idea. And I said, excuse me, what's a good idea? And he said, you're trying to give the impression that it might be Paul singing. And I said, yeah. So I agreed with him. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. But anyway, Bert was not happy with me, but somehow it came off. I mean, it won them the Academy Award. It just was a great song, and Hal David just had a way of writing these simple. We had many conversations, Hal and I, about this song, and they asked him to write a frivolous, silly song, and he just said, BJ, I don't write silly songs, but he tried to be as lighthearted as he could, and as it turned out, it just was one of those great truisms and honest songs that just, so many people connected with. Bert, and I think Bert had wrote the ending, that fade out thing, and so we re-recorded it about 6 weeks later for the single, and the single, I Was in Shape, and it came off great,
You sang that at the Academy Awards too, didn't you?
I did. I did the Academy Award show in 1970, and at that time it was the largest audience, viewing audience of all time. And oh man, that was just so. I was so nervous, but they had a big production thing for Raindrops, and I wore the Sundance Kid suit, and shot a gun off and everything. And I've seen the film since. And it really came off well, and it was really a special night for me, and all the beautiful Hollywood people there, and all the people I got to see. So, really was a highlight for me. I so loved working with Bert, and especially Hal was like a guy's guy, and Bert is a little bit more sophisticated, let's say. But both of those guys as a team, they did some very important work. And maybe some of the most important of all time from America. So I so enjoyed working with them.
Well, they did, especially, this would be Hal more than Bert, but Hal had a way of writing almost nonsensical lyrics on a lot of songs, and they just came out like they should be there.
Yeah, I mean, it just came out so brilliantly. I mean, especially, a house is not a home. I mean, a chair is not a chair unless there's someone sitting there. I mean, just the way the guy would write was a great thing, and he was so in love with his wife, and of course she passed away, and he had a I forget her name now, his last wife, his second wife. He was always in love, and people loved him, and I think he just had a great thought process, I don't know, there was just something about him that was so honest and intimate in a very simple, kind of quirky way, and I think it really influenced the way Bacharach had to phrase those lines, and really lent itself to creating that Bacharach style that's so unique,
Yeah, truly one of the great songwriting duos of all time.
And then, the way Bert played the piano is, I mean, no one has ever done that before or since. I mean, when he would get on that piano and start putting that Bacharach thing down, it was amazing to see.
What's the situation with your catalog albums at this point? I mean, I know that they released a Scepter A and B sides album about, I don't know, a year and a half ago and so forth. Yeah. But what about some of your albums? Like, okay, I'm going to speak from a personal standpoint now. On My Way, I think, was the third album I ever bought. And I'm just wondering, is there anything as far as re-releasing some of the catalog albums?
Well, it's kind of sad, disappointing, especially on my end. Those masters, Scepter went out of business right when we cut Rock and Roll Lullaby, and we had the song Rock and Roll Lullaby, and That's What Friends Are For. And we had an album that Billy Joe Thomas album where these great writers wrote songs for me and then came and played on the songs themselves, Terrell King and John Sebastian and a lot of great people. And they went bankrupt as we finished that album, and they actually were not even able to press records there for that album, which may have, so I lost a bunch of hits there. It was a disappointment for me. But then the masters, somebody else comes and they lease them or they own them, and there's a company there in Nashville that has all my masters, and it's just a mess, a chaotic mess. And actually we were contacted by these people, or it's possible that Gloria contacted them, and they put the retrospective out of the Scepter Records, and we kind of cooperated with the people who have had our masters, and we think have abused them and really misused them for years, but we've cooperated with them so this album would be complete and done well. But we're really disappointed in that we don't have control over our masters, and you might never see that those things reprinted again unless we can gain control of them and ownership of them. We had hoped that the court, the judge, would give us the ownership of our masters, but it's hard to make people understand exactly what that situation is, and that's really a form of art that you've created, and somebody else is coming in and adding colors and painting over your painting, and the things that you've already paid for have been deducted out of your royalties. It's hard to make people understand that. So it's doubtful that we'll ever see those records again, and that's a shame because I think On My Way was one of the best things I did, and I'm disappointed in that.
I keep hoping to see. I know that there are a number of labels in Europe and especially in England that have been able to get a hold of a lot of the older masters and albums, and a lot of times they'll release them as two albums on one and so forth, but at least they're getting them out there. And the other thing is that just recently Motown and a number of other labels have at least started to re-release some of the older product on just as MP3 releases versus physical CD, and I keep hoping one of those two things will happen.
Yeah, I feel the same way you do. I hope it will happen. And I kind of suffered in a worldwide thing because there was a guy named I got so many of my records covered in Europe by Jonathan King and Sasha Distel, and down in Australia, Johnny Farnham covered Raindrops. And I think covers sometimes are flattering in that respect. They love your song, but when somebody covers you when you initially release a song, I don't get that. I mean, I just personally would never do that. So I'm kind of hoping that some of those people over there will re-release some of those originals and see what will happen.
Are you? I know that you have some dates lined up. Are you planning on going out on the road at all, extensively at all, as far as promoting the new album?
Well, I'm gonna. I probably will. The gigs come a little. Probably what I'm gonna do next month. And those gigs will come in. This month. So they're not. I don't get to really plan and book them as far ahead as I did in previous years. But I'll probably do 50 or 60 shows this year, and we of course have it in our mind that we're going to put together a show with all the guests on this album, and either do it for PBS or get it filmed somehow, or we'll do it with the label or just whatever. But we do have plans to do that, and I hope that happens.
That would be great.
Yeah, that would be so much fun. I'd love to do that. And I do believe that's going to come to fruition, but right now nothing definite is inked in.
Any other plans for the future out past this album?
Yeah, I've always my first influences was R&B music, and my first tour, after I had Lonesome, and it's kind of hard to think of it like this right now, but at that time it was kind of an R&B record. The first gig I got, I was booked out with James Brown, and I went out with James Brown for a week or so, and then I went up to Cleveland and worked with Jackie Wilson. So that's the one thing that I was so influenced at the beginning by Bobby Bland and Lou Junior Parker, Ray Charles, and that kind of thing. So that's the one thing I've never really done extensively in my career is the R&B music. So that's the thing I'm really formulating now and talking with Kyle about, and we're planning on doing as soon as we finish with this album. It'll probably be a little time in the future, but we want to do a definitive R&B record with a live band and a horn section, and just do the songs that inspired me back then. So that would be a lot of fun to do, and that's what we're planning on right now. I know. Having said that, I know a Burt Bacharach, Hal David album would be a no-brainer. But so many people have done that. We don't know if we could do that. But that's something I would love to do.
Our site is specifically for veteran artists. We only report on artists who have been recording for 25 years or more because we feel a lot of that stuff is overlooked in the regular music media. And
I think you're right.
But I'm always curious when I talk with folks like you is who you are admiring among the more modern artists who are out there right now.
Well, I have really become a big fan of Isaac Slade's because I had no idea he was going to bring that depth of soul and that much passion in his interpretation of "I'm So Lonesome." I was very impressed with that. So I do look into him and I listen to him. But having said that, I still, if I listen to music just for my own thing, I still listen to old school stuff. I mean, I listen to a lot of Motown and Marvin Gaye, and a lot of Al Green, and of course Elvis Presley. I'm not a huge, and I understand that that's just the nature of the business, and the current music is, it's always about what's new and what's the new guy and what's the new thing, and the music now is to me, I don't know what you think about this, but the music now is such a reflection of our society and the stress and the pressure that our whole planet is going through. And there's so much angst and anger in the music now that it just doesn't. I connect with very, very little of it. I love the roots. If I listen to some new stuff, I love to listen to the roots because there's a real depth there in their music, and I just worked with them, so that was a big thrill for me. But I'm not a fan of a lot of the current music, and I know there's some great music being made, but I'm not really up on it like I probably should be. I'm still listening to old school, but I do like Isaac, and I love the roots, and I think there's some good music being made. I'm not one of those guys that is trying to say, well, our current music is not good. I'm not saying that. It's just different and it's new, and it doesn't not as much of it appeals to me like it used to in my day. We were all fans of each other. We were all different, and we all like to listen to each other's music, and that doesn't seem to be the case today. It seems to be very competitive, and even Vince said, I asked him, well, hey, you hear from this guy, what kind of guy is he? And he says, these guys don't communicate like we did, BJ. I mean, I've never even spoken with them. They've never called me, and so there's a different dynamic going on now that kind of doesn't really appeal to me that much.
I think I have to agree with you on more modern music. I mean, I try and stay up to date and listen just because of the site and trying to draw parallels and so forth, but I still find myself going back and listening. When I listen to newer artists, I'm listening to those who are at least paying tribute to or recreating an older sound. Like there's this great gentleman out of England by the name of James Hunter who sounds...
Oh, I heard of him.
He's straight 60s soul. And things like that. And it's just what I'm drawn to when I listen to things. There's another group called Explorers Club that's out of North Carolina who you could swear that it was an album that was made during the 60s by someone like the Turtles of the Association. And they're tremendously talented artists that aren't getting the airplay they deserve because they are a throwback.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe it. I think a lot of the new stuff, a lot of the new people are even going back to the, hey, let's do it live like they used to do it. And, there's so much more appealing in that approach. And I think you're right. There are so many good people out there that are not getting any exposure at all. And it just comes down to money now. I think, gosh, it's like $500,000 or something just to promote somebody's first record. It might even be more than that now. So it's the whole money thing is preventing a lot of people from being heard.
Well, listen, we've kind of run over our time here, but I really do appreciate you talking to us, and really best of luck with the new album.
Roger, I so appreciate it. You gave us such a leg up and such a boost, and I really, really appreciate that, man. Can't thank you enough. We want to talk again in the future. I'd love to do that, and just thank you, man. I can't thank you enough for that. It was nice.
Our thanks to B.J. Thomas for talking with us. His album, The Living Room Sessions, is available from Wrinkled Records. We'll be back soon with more editions of the VVN Music Podcast. Remember that you can hear the VVN Music Podcast via iHeartRadio, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, and the VVN Music website. For the latest news on the veteran artists of rock, pop, soul, country, folk, and blues, go to vvnmusic.com. If you have any comments or questions about the website or this podcast, please send them to vvnnetwork@gmail.com. Our theme music is performed by Yahar. This program was recorded on December 12th, 2016, and is a production of the VVN Network, copyright 2016.